Back here for a new edition of Ask Mike, and the Razorbacks yet again coming close, but just not quite good enough to get the job done. It was the same under Sam Pittman. Mike, thus far, it's been the same under Bobby Petrino. Close, but just not quite good enough.
Yeah, and the problems are similar, but it's amazing the reaction by the fans is different. Even though the results are kind of the same, I think they see that the offense has gotten a little better. I don't know what the reasoning is for that. I don't know if there were some things that Pittman was doing that held back the offense a little bit. I do think the defense, especially in this game that was just played against A&M, I don't think they were as bad as people thought. A&M is really good offensively, and they made some really good plays, some good third down situations. I didn't see many instances where it looked like they were just giving up, like in the Notre Dame game. They just got beat by better players.
Arkansas really seems to have a lot of attention here with Bobby Petrino and the players, the buy-ins there, but just a couple things defensively, kind of holding this team back right now. First question here coming from S. Giles, who asked, what do you think? Has Petrino done enough to get the job? Should they go ahead and announce it right now? I'm not sure about that one.
I think he would like that. I don't see the point of doing that. Here's why. I'm not sure about a lot of things, but I'm absolutely sure that he wants this job, that he's not sitting around going, hey, maybe I could take another job.
Yeah, maybe I want to do this, maybe I don't.
I don't think that's going on. I'm not saying he wouldn't take another job if he didn't get this one, but I don't think you've got any reason to jump early on this. You just wait till the end of the season. If he's your guy, you wait till the end of the season, and then you sit down with him. I still think that's what they want to do. I think they want to wait till the season's over when he's not, at least before, I'm assuming they won't go to a bowl game. They might, but if there's no bowl game, or even if there is, you got a period right after the last game of the season when he's not distracted, and they can sit down with him and do an extensive interview and ask him about defense. Who would you hire as defensive coordinator? What's your philosophy? When you were here before, you didn't have a reputation of caring much about defense. Have you changed? How are you different than you were here before? So I don't see any reason why they announce it now, even if that were their decision.
How about this? If they lose to Auburn on Saturday, is there still a path for him to be the head coach?
Yeah, there is, because you could still win some other games. You could pull off an upset. You could beat an LSU, or you could beat a Texas. I mean, he beats Texas, he got the job if that's the only other win he's got, because they hate Texas that bad. But it would make it more difficult, I think, if they don't. This is a game they should win. You
really think at 4-8 overall he could?
So
maybe you beat Auburn, Texas?
Yeah, if you beat Texas, I'm telling you, that makes a huge difference. That was the whole thing about Brett Bielema when he beat Texas down there in the whatever the bowl that was, the
Houston Bowl, Texas
Bowl, Texas Bowl, whatever. That's when everybody went bonkers over him, and he figured it out too, and sort of used it to his own advantage.
Horns down, right? Maybe using that to the wrong kind of advantage. Next question here coming from Pig's Feet, who wants to know, do you believe that Coach Petrino is gaining traction with the powers that be, or do you think they are not really paying attention to him with eyes on someone else? I'll tell you what I believe. He's got the attention of the fan base. I was blown away the crowd was that good given the conditions and the delay on Saturday.
Yeah, and if you look at social media, and I read it a lot. I just sit around at night on my phone and read
doom scrolling. We all do it.
Yeah, I read Twitter, I read Facebook, I read anything I can get my hands on, just trying to react to see what fans are saying. If you read that, I think it's 80-20, go ahead and hire him. We're convinced. And there's a reason for that, and I just got through talking to you about this before we started. Yeah. I think fans like offense. That you can tell them that defense wins championships, but most of them want to see offense. I think that's what the networks do. They want offensive teams on TV. They want lots of scoring, 45, 46. They love that. Better than 7-6, absolutely. So because of that, I think the fans say, oh, wow, we can have a good offensive team and I can watch. And then they just sort of think you can go get a better defense. They're just assuming that, even though you shouldn't assume that. But, yeah, I think he's gaining traction. The problem with does it really matter, what really matters is he gaining traction with the people that will make the hire? And I'm telling you, Trey, they're being pretty close, tight-lipped about this. I'm trying like crazy to sort of get a definite feel for what's going on there. And nobody is really saying 100%, yeah, this is happening or that's happening. I'm getting a lot of vague answers from people.
Well, whenever you say, hey, people love offense, how about you as a media member, vested interest in this team being as good as they possibly can be? It's one thing to be bad, but hey, if you're going to be bad, be fun bad.
That's
Is,
right.
is that sort of like how the fan base feels, you think? Like, well, hey, at least they're exciting.
Yeah, and I'm that way. I mean, when I was a kid, the offense in the college or even the pros, whatever kind of football you're talking, wasn't anything like what it is now.
No.
It was mostly, I mean, a 7-6 game, a 3-0 game. Games like that were very common. I watched a Cotton Bowl game on TV one year, and it was 3-0. And I don't remember being bored, but I wouldn't watch that now. I'd get up and go, this stinks, you know.
Yeah.
It'd be like, I don't want to rag on soccer too much, but that's what's always bothered me about soccer. You just sit there, dunk, 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 back and forth for an hour, and nobody scored, and you're going, what is this? So I think that would be the same thing. You want points. You want it in basketball too.
If you're going to be a 6-6, 7-5 program kind of year in, year out, for the most part, save for a couple blips on the radar, I'm with you. I want to see an offense that can score 40 every single week. Next question here coming from Marty Bird's Proxy, who asked, do you see our deadline to fish or cut bait moving forward now all these openings are coming up? Might there be a scenario that BP is told in the next bye week we're going a different direction?
Well, certainly you could do that. Here's the problem with that. How do you keep that quiet? Because that's what you'd try to do. Yeah. You'd tell him, but you still wouldn't want it to affect the team. And I just think that's very tricky. I think you can do it, you could do it, but you'd have to worry that it would get out, and you don't want that out. You don't want him still coaching games when he knows he's not getting the job.
How do you feel about where Arkansas's job stands right now? There's some big-time jobs that are coming. You know, Penn State.
Yeah, obviously that
Florida,
could affect a lot of
certainly,
things.
even other names are talking about.
Yeah.
You're getting pushed down the ladder a little bit.
Well, I talked last week about how that these job openings, and there were just potentials at that time. I mean, the job at Florida wasn't open then. And there will be more. I promise you there will be. And I said last week that I think that the more jobs open up, the less options I think Arkansas has, because it takes away some of their other candidates. So that's good for Petrino.
Did they miss the landscape on this a little bit? And all I'm trying to say is there's a saying that when you don't fire your coach in December, when you fire a coach in October, I should say, all that means you should have fired him last December.
Right.
The landscape was different. There weren't big jobs open. Now, you know, LSU, Florida, possibly Florida State, Penn State, you could have some real competition here.
Sure, and that creates problems for them. And again, that's bad for maybe them if they want somebody else, but it's good for Petrino, I think. I think it helps him.
Arkansas fans don't want to settle, but I do agree that there's a lot of support right now for Bobby by the fan base. Next question here comes from the Bionic Pig, who wants to know if rumors of Auburn, LSU, and FSU jobs opening up become a reality, would Arkansas be pushed to rush its hire due to competition?
Well, it's the same version of what I just said. You could do that, and I could see why you would do it if you could keep it quiet. And there would be interest on the part of, let's say, somebody that's another school right now would say yes to that job. Let's say it's Summerall at Tulane. If you got him to say yes, he would want to keep it quiet till the season's over, and you would want to keep it quiet. But can you keep anything quiet these days? It's almost impossible. So I think it's tricky. I mean, it's a call I wouldn't want to have to make. I'd be sitting there going, maybe we ought to wait, knowing that if you wait, you could end up losing somebody you want.
Here's what I do kind of find interesting with maybe not rushing it. What's the competition for Bobby Petrino? You know, you kind of alluded to it. Where else is he going to go?
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason to rush it on his part. But I think if
their part with him.
Yeah, but if there's another coach out there that you want and you think he's going to get picked off by somebody else, if you don't beat him to the punch, then maybe you get to his agent and try to solidify a deal right away. And then the agent, if he's smart, is going to keep that quiet.
Is there any scenario, I guess anything's possible, where they could get burned by Petrino? Like let's say Bobby does get this team to 6-6, and Florida Auburn, who might fire Hugh Freeze. There was a time when they loved Bobby. Maybe they remember how much they loved him. There's rumors that at one point they even offered him the job. Could you see that happen or no? I think you've alluded to you really believe it's Arkansas or nothing for Bobby.
I think it could happen if he went on a winning streak, because he can theoretically still take Arkansas to a bowl.
So if he got 4-1 down the stretch.
So if he got them bowl eligible and beat teams like Texas and LSU, then all of a sudden he starts becoming real attractive to a school like Auburn. So I don't know how he would react to that. Now, he said one time, supposedly, I don't like Auburn. I know a guy in the media was talking to him about an hour ago on the phone, and he said he heard Petrino say that one time, I don't like Auburn. Well, maybe he's changed his mind by now. I don't know.
Maybe they're mad about some of the stuff getting out there.
Yeah, that
the
last
airplane and the Tommy
all that
Tuberville
stuff.
thing and all that
It
stuff.
embarrassed him a lot, I can tell you, at the time.
All right, time for a timeout here on Ask Mike. A whole lot more to get to coming up right after a quick timeout. Back here with more on Mike Irwin on this week's Ask Mike, breaking down all things coming out of the Arkansas-Texas A&M game. Arkansas nearly pulling off the upset, but they come up just shy. First time that Bobby Petrino has lost to the Aggies in his time as an Arkansas interim now and previously as the head coach. Next question coming from Razor Alex 88, who says, I came across a point someone made somewhere on social media where they suggested they keep the interim tag on Bobby for 2026. It is a rough situation for Bobby, having Tennessee, A&M, Auburn, Miss State, LSU, Texas, and Mizzou to really show what he can do as the interim head coach. I'll make a point here on this one. They kind of sort of tried this with John L. Smith, and it did not go well.
Yeah, look, I understand the reasoning. The reasoning would be, okay, you're not going to really see what he can do until you let him have a whole year to put a team on the field, recruit, get a staff and all that. But the problem with that is you're going to hire a guy and let everybody know when the season starts that it's a job.
We may or we may not. Yeah.
It's a job interview. How are you going to get a staff to stay under those conditions? How are you going to get any recruits to come in under those conditions? So it's not a good idea.
As it relates to the staff, do you think Bobby can be told what to do when it comes to who he hires? Like, hey, Bobby, maybe we want you, but we need a real defensive coordinator, high-end coordinator. We'll pay him, and you got to be hands-off. That's their head coach defense.
I think they could scrutinize that, you know. I think what they would do is if he told them he was going to hire somebody and they were not impressed with whoever it was and thought, well, here we are again. He's just hiring a guy he doesn't care about. Now, here's an issue that could pop up. What they could basically say to him is, you know, when you were here before, you didn't have a reputation of caring much about defense. So we want some assurance from you that you're going to hire a defensive coordinator, but you're going to let him run his show. Mm-hmm. You're not going to push him over in the corner and say, get out of my way. Because he did that when he was here to Willie Robinson. I saw it happen in practice. I saw one day Willie Robinson, one of his guys, one of his linebackers, who was the running back? He just leveled him.
Nile Davis?
It was Nile Davis. He just leveled him. And Petrino just jumped all over. You hurt my guy, and you're going to be in real trouble. Yeah. And Willie was like, hey, what are we supposed to do?
Playing football here.
We're trying to tackle him. So I think they could stipulate, look, we want you to hire a really good defensive coordinator, and guess what? You got to let him do his job. You can't undermine him just because you like offense.
Should there be any hesitation? Does this have any, a coach is only as good as his staff. You look at Nick Saban's coaching tree, it is tremendous. Frank Broyles, Arkansas legend, known as having some of the best assistants in college football history. As far as I know, there's probably a point out there, but Bobby's coaching tree is not very good. From his brother to Garrick McGee to Paul Haynes to other guys that have ventured out and tried things. There's really nobody to speak of. Mike Zimmer was on his staff at Atlanta, blasted him, buried him in the media. That's probably the best assistant that's ever worked for Petrino. Should that be a hesitation kind of thing, or no, the model can still be head coach centric?
You're asking me to speculate on how they would feel. I know what I would do. That would be one of the questions I would ask him. I would say, look,
how are we going to get good coaches?
You don't have a reputation of hiring good assistants, and some of them have a history of saying, hey, I don't like the way you coach, and treat them. So maybe you'd want to be rest assured that I think he's different. That's what I would say. I've watched him. People tell me, he's not. I knew him really well when he was here before, and I'm telling you, this is a different guy. He's just different in the way he's handling things. He's different in the way he's dealing. Doesn't go as bonkers over referees as he used to. Still does it some, but not like he did before. And his press conferences are a lot different. So I would say I would want him to explain to me how he's changed in terms of needing to have a really good staff.
A great moment in that game on Saturday when A&M kind of faked the injury and they had the ISO on Petrino.
Yeah, he still can do it.
He was getting after the officials.
But
like,
he's
hey
not
guys,
like Shane Beamer.
Where's the flag at? All right, Uncle Cocktail, our next question here. Maybe the Razorbacks going to force you to have a cocktail after a couple of these games. Asking, it would be crazy for Arkansas not to hire Bobby P. He's already here. He owes us, and I think he actually likes it here. He's proven he can still be an offensive guru. A similar response here from Razorboo, who says, Petrino can do the job, and he can get the right DC. Cut loose the purse strings for NIL, and let's get this ship turned around. With all the firings going on, this is the right thing to do. What about you, Mike? You think?
Yeah, well, that's what's out there with a lot of these fans. When I talk about 80-20, that is, those two responses are what I read over and over again, some version of that, which is, hey, we're convinced he's a good offensive coach, and yeah, he can get a coordinator. And yeah, we can get defense.
And let's not forget, and last time we were good, Bobby was the coach. Let's make him the coach again.
Yeah, I mean, it's that. And the problem with that assumption is the defensive part, because I'm not saying he can't, but I wouldn't assume that just based on his history.
I mean, times can change.
Absolutely.
And Petrino even had a moment there on Monday at his press conference where he was talking about like some of the the social lingo that his grandkids use. It's been a minute since we had a turnover, and got a pretty good kick out of that. So hey, he's relatable to the kids, but I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic to see his recruiting and the landscape with NIL. Has it changed that much to maybe where the head coach's personality isn't as important as it used to be?
Maybe a little bit. Maybe it's more about NIL than anything else.
I think kids are most concerned about the money.
Yeah. I don't know what percentage are. I still think there are a lot of them out there that kind of, okay, as long as I get this amount, I still want to go where I want to go. I still like this guy. If there's a huge difference, if one school's offering you $500,000 and the other school's offering you $50,000, yeah, you're probably going to go with the one that offers you $500,000.
And hopefully Arkansas will be on that side that's closer to the $500,000 than the $50,000. But hey, maybe that's not the case with how things have gone down in recent years. Next question here coming from Popular Porkster, who says A&M and Tennessee are by far the two best teams Arkansas has played this year. If Bobby is the coach at the beginning of the year, our record is better. Just facts.
Here's what I would say, and I'm trying to speculate, obviously. I think if he had been the coach at the start of the season, they would have beaten Memphis. There's no way the defense would have been as bad as it was that day against Memphis. And they would have scored more points, too. They didn't score a lot of points that, and I think that was part of what the lack of focus and all of that. I think he would have motivated the team better, so they'd have won that game. Would they have beaten Ole Miss? Yeah, maybe. Maybe they'd have been they just needed a little bit better effort.
Yeah. And so, one stop, really.
So maybe that would have been a difference. We know now, I don't think anything would have changed Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to beat you. Maybe it would have just been closer. And then we've already seen him against Tennessee and Notre Dame. Close, making mistakes at the end, didn't get embarrassed. And again, I think on the heels, the Memphis loss, even though it was a close game, was embarrassing to Razorback fans. And then the whole thing with Notre Dame was really embarrassing. So you're coming off two really embarrassing games, and then so these last two haven't been embarrassing. You've been in it. I mean, what did Elko say after the game? Did you watch his press conference?
I saw the opening comment. We actually ran the cut on Sunday.
Yeah,
he was blown away by Talon Green.
Yeah.
And Talon was absolutely sensational in that game, and he tuned up that defense.
Yeah, so, I mean, he was saying lots of great things about Arkansas. So, again, I think there's been improvement. But how much of a difference would it made if he had been the coach at the start of the year? Maybe one win, maybe 2 wins more. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, are you really convinced that much has changed these last 2 weeks? I do see better effort from the defense. I do. They're getting to the ball, but they're not finishing plays defensively. And Pittman lost by 6, had a chance to beat Ole Miss. Lost by 1 in an unfathomable way against Memphis. You're inside the 10-yard line whenever you cough it up. So, you lose by 3 to Tennessee. You were down by 17 some late. Texas A&M, same thing. It feels to me, if I'm just really being objective here, not much has changed.
I think what's changed is these last 2 weeks, the teams they were playing were better offensively than maybe some of the
Definitely than Memphis.
Yeah.
Ole Miss, one of the better offenses in the country.
Yeah, but I still think Tennessee's probably a little better. And you know how I feel about A&M. I think they may be one of the best.
You think they're a playoff team?
Yeah, I think have one of the better offenses in the league, maybe the best. Here's what they do. Here's what A&M does that gets overlooked. They make big plays in key situations that other teams sometimes don't make. I mean, just go back and look at that game. I've done it, man. They just, okay, you got them. It's 3rd down. Okay, 3rd and 8. We're going to get
1, you got them.
Yeah, we're going to get
yards
him.
in the backfield.
And then the guy, you hit him in the backfield, and he still squirts out of there, and there he's got the 1st down. It kills you. So those guys are good offensively. So I think there's been improvement.
If they would have made that stop on 4th down,
it
I
changes
think
everything.
They probably
they're on the 35-yard line.
Yeah, that was a gutsy call. It was a full yard too. It wasn't inches. Next question here coming from Dakota Sainsbury, who says, invest in a defense, invest in a staff. BP could be our guy for the next few years. He still has his 8 ball on offense.
See, that's that same thing over and over again. I try to include in many questions as possible.
Sure did.
But what this does is show you what's out there. I can't tell you how many posts I've read on social media that are a version of that. Really love the offense, no question about that. Hey, go get a defensive guy, we'll be good. And you're assuming they're going to do that.
I think nostalgia, though, plays a big role in that as well. I made a point on that. People remember the way it used to be, and it's a lot different. I mean,
when he was here, you didn't get embarrassed. You were in the upper, they call it the upper room of the SEC. The upper room, you're up in that upper room.
Maybe not tier 1, but like top of tier 2.
You're right. Well,
that's where they lived.
The last 2 years, they were 3rd, right there.
Yeah, absolutely. No worse than 4th, but yeah. Well, the year they went to the Sugar Bowl, I think there was only 2 teams. Yeah, Auburn and Arkansas were the only. No, they were 2nd that year.
Yeah, second.
The East was so bad. They went to the 2nd best bowl
That's right.
game.
Second
group.
In 2010, they were 2nd in the SEC. In 2011, I think they were 3rd.
Correct. It was LSU and Auburn played for the national. I think they played for the national title. Right. All right, time to take a break here on Ask Mike. A whole lot more coming your way with Mike Irwin after a quick timeout. Back here on Ask Mike with Mike Irwin and talking a whole lot about the Arkansas coaching search. A lot of support out there for Bobby Petrino, taking a whole lot of questions on that. Next question coming from Hob Hog, who says, what are the legal repercussions involved if we hire BP, who was fired for cause by the same school?
I'm assuming that they've already talked to their lawyers, because if you say at the start of this whole thing,
he is the head coach.
When you made him the interim coach, I'm assuming, and then they made it clear that he had a shot at the job depending on how he performs. So I'm assuming before they ever made that decision, they went and talked to their legal people. So from a legal standpoint, I think they believe they're okay. Here's the problem. You've got a university, and you've got people in there, professors, male and female, that may have looked at what happened, back when he was here the first time and said, "Boy, that's unacceptable." You could claim sexual harassment, or you could claim favoritism. Either one of those things, which are not supposed to be a part of the hiring process at a school. So they could come back and say, "You violated your own policy when doing this, and I'm offended, and I work here, and it's going to hurt my reputation to work at a school that does this." Now, would they win? Probably not. But it would be, I've never heard of a case, just saying this, I've never heard of a case where a school hired a head football coach and then they got sued over it by somebody on the staff, on the academic staff. So, it'd be a little strange.
Along these same lines with what you're talking about in the Bobby Petrino firing, there was a post on social media by Texas A&M after the game that alluded to some things in the past. Go see it on your own time, and satirical, however you want to point it out. Bobby, love you, mean it. You've been good to me, been good to the media since you've come back, so thank you there. But what I mean by that, does any of that, some of the clowning that could happen in the future, do you think there are some members on the board that would say, well, do we really want to go down this road full time?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how unified they were in making him the interim. But you have to consider that could still affect recruiting too. I mean, you're going in and talking to a kid's mom. Well, you don't want him to go to that place. You know what this guy did. Yeah. Have you heard about what he did the first time he was at Arkansas? You have to take all that into consideration. But overall, I think most people kind of have said that's over and done with. Everybody deserves a second chance. I keep pointing this out. How long has it been since he was here the last time? I mean, it was 2011, right?
Yeah.
2012?
April 2012.
Okay, so how long do you need where you've had 7 or 8 other jobs? How far do you go before people realize, well, there's no evidence of you doing that again? There's been no evidence of any of that stuff in his last 6, 7 jobs.
All right, next question here coming from Turnt Woldridge, who says Arkansas hasn't forced a single turnover against a P4 team. Not one. As again, made a reference earlier, Bobby Petrino saying we haven't forced a turnover in a minute. It has been quite a while. And I think they're aggressive on defense. That's what they're trying to do. As opposed to getting stops, it feels like they're trying to force turnovers.
I think most of that falls on the defense. It's a sign that they've got problems that they can't force these turnovers. But by the same token, even if you can't, even if the defense is not built to force, you'd think sooner or later it would happen. Here's what I told people, and I was absolutely wrong about it. I said, the first time Arkansas plays a game this year and they don't turn the ball over, they're going to win because the other team will turn it over. Well, they didn't. Both teams had no turnovers. How often do you see a game in which neither team turns the ball over one time? It doesn't happen very often, but this was it. So even when they didn't turn it over themselves, they still didn't get one that would help them. And I'll still say this, sooner or later, somebody's out of the blue got to turn the ball over. Guys running in the open, running free, about to score a touchdown, trips over his own feet, ball hits the ground, bounces up. Arkansas grabs it out of the thin air and runs it back the other way. You're going to get a break like that sooner or later. When, I do not know, but it does happen.
They just one more play against A&M, and it truly could have been a different game. Next question here coming from C Says, who says the difference between us and Vanderbilt is that they enter the game knowing they will find a way to win. We enter the game knowing that we will find a way to lose. Diego Pavia, the quarterback there for the Commodores, he is unbelievably confident. Man, that kid has so much swagger.
Look, I do believe that you can create that culture, and I think that culture has been created at Vanderbilt, that they just go in thinking, I don't care who we're playing, we believe we can win.
Alabama, LSU, or Kentucky, we got this.
Don't necessarily think that Arkansas goes into games thinking it will lose, but it's in your head that you haven't been successful. So the job Petrino has to do is to somehow convince these guys, and it happens only when you win. When you win, then you say, see what we can do, and then you got to get another one. Because the only way you change that mindset is by showing them what happens when you think that. I mean, I can think all day long that I'm going to make a whole lot of money in 5 minutes. But if it doesn't happen, why would I believe it? You know, so you can't just tell players on a team that's been losing games, hey, we have a mindset that we're going to win. I don't think you talk about it. I think you say, we can win this game, we can win this game. What's in the minds of those players? And then here's the problem. Every one of those guys, if there's 40 of them that's going to compete in the game, every one of them's different. How many of them do you reach, and how many of them are still going, oh, I don't know about this? You don't know. That's why football is the most it's unpredictable, because there are more people involved. Baseball is the only other sport that has any close to the number of players out in a game at one time. When you have just a small number, like tennis or something like that, I think it's way easier to predict what's going to happen, because it's easier to know how many people are involved and what do they do. I mean, you can't, as a coach, you can't get into the minds of 40 people, 40 guys, and know what they're all thinking. And each one of them, 22 guys out on the field at one time, if you could put a computer and tie it into their brain, then you would know what happens on a play, but
Total
you don't.
Hear me out on this one. So Vanderbilt, which is what the question was about, forever the doormat, I mean the dog of the SEC. Am I crazy to think right now that Vanderbilt's a better job than Arkansas? You ever been to Nashville? It's beautiful. It's a real city. Got the honky tonks. Got really cool stuff going on in there. World class institute. Stanford, Duke, Ivy League schools. It's on that level. Cool school, cool brand. Is that maybe a better job than Arkansas right now?
Well, if I had that job right now, I'd stay there. It wouldn't just be Arkansas. I'll tell you why I would stay. For what you said, I would be thinking, okay, look, when I recruit, I'm telling these guys, are you kidding me? You have to live at whatever school you go to. You got to live there. What better place to live than Nashville? You got a tremendous social life there. It's a great place to live. You got a good campus. It's academically.
I think it's one of the 20 best schools in the country.
Yeah, if you get a degree from Vanderbilt, you're set for the rest of your life. People go, boy, he's really smart. Yeah. So there's just a lot of good things about it as long as you win. And now look what they've done. They've made their stadium look a lot nicer. It's a little bigger. I've always said this because I remember War Memorial when it was 53,000, and it still is, but I remember what that noise level was like, and it didn't get a lot different when Razorback Stadium got bigger. If the game is exciting, beyond about 50, 60,000, what's the difference? I mean, there's not a lot.
Noise is noise, yeah.
Yeah.
Loud is loud, like hot is hot, cold is
So
cold.
I think Vanderbilt's the environment there now that they're winning. I mean, it's a good environment, and it's a good school, good place to live. So is it a better job than Arkansas right now? If you've got it, I wouldn't leave there for Arkansas.
Everybody wanting to chase the money, though. We'll see what Clark Lee does. Next question here coming from Just Win, who asked about a former Vanderbilt coach here in James Franklin. Do you think Franklin has any interest in Arkansas? I heard his name mentioned for the job. Has he actually said anything about Arkansas?
Now, is this Franklin? Here's what I was told. They had the committee that's making the hire, whatever. They haven't made contact with him, and he just said, "Thanks for the interest. Yeah, maybe I'm interested, but I'm not ready to make a decision right now." My own personal feeling is that he can get a bigger, better, more important job. I think with all these jobs that are opening up, why wouldn't somebody want him? Yeah, you could sit here and nitpick his career, and you could say, well, boy, this guy really recruits, but look what he does with the recruits. He had great players at Penn State this year and fell apart on him. I still think it's not like there's a million guys out there with a better resume. He's going to have options.
How should Arkansas fans feel if James Franklin is the next head coach here?
I think they could get excited because they could say this guy really recruits, and he does. And, I'm not trying to get political here, but Arkansas's never had a black head football coach. You hire one.
Unprecedented. Look what Nolan did.
Yeah, it would make a difference. It'd be just like when Nolan was hired. You can now say, look what we did. It makes your whole school look better, I think. So, yeah, it would be a good hire. I'm not sure he would come here. I'm not saying he won't, but yeah, I think it's going to be tough.
It seems like he has his eyes on Florida, a lot of chirping about James Franklin, maybe to Florida, as with Lane Kiffin too.
And if you've been in the SEC, if you've been in the SEC at a Vanderbilt and you're considering coming back, are you kidding me? Is there a better place than Florida? Maybe Texas or somewhere like that. Maybe Georgia, but Florida's. I mean, it's a
three national championships since 1996.
Yeah, and it's a great place to live. I mean, you're going
no state income tax. You're making $10 million a year.
You're not going to freeze to death in the winter. You're right there, but you're not that close to the ocean, but you're close by. And so I would think Florida would be very attractive to a James Franklin.
I love Fayetteville, love Northwest Arkansas, but I'm with you. Florida would be tough to turn down. That
absolutely. I hate cold weather. That's the only thing I don't like about living here. In the winter months, I'm walking around. You'll see. You'll see what happens to me when it gets cold. I'm going to be walking around with big, heavy coats on. I'll be coming in here, and just waiting for warm weather to return.
You know what James Franklin represents to me potentially at Florida? They've tried everything. Let's hire the hottest coordinator in the country, Will Muschamp. Hey, let's go get the guy that didn't work. Let's go get the guy that everybody wants, Dan Mullen. This guy can coach just about everybody. That kind of worked, but they still got rid of him. Let's go get the mid-major up-and-comer. That'll work. That's what we did with Urban Meyer, Billy Napier, Jim McElwain. Didn't work. Why can't they figure it out there?
It is beyond me because
Texas went through this same phase for 10, 15 years.
They did, but they've got a great stadium. The environment there is unbelievable. It's as tough a place to play when they're winning as anywhere you'd go to. I don't know why they just don't hire the right guy, and I'm convinced when they do hire the right guy, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. But will they? I don't know.
All right, he's Mike Irwin. We're doing it all day long here on Ask Mike. We're going to take a quick time out and then come back with more of your questions. Back here on Ask Mike, in time for one final block as we're wrapping it up here on this week's edition, getting you set for the game against Auburn. Displaced Hog fan wants to know, you said that you had on good authority that Dan Mullen wanted the job at Arkansas. He has stated that he has 0.0 interest in the job and that we need to hire Gus. Is this just coach speak for let me finish the season, or does he really not want the job after all and you were just wrong? Look, shout out Mike Irwin, getting some mentions there on social media, doing your job. Dan Mullen responding to this guy. So, hey, anytime you're responding to something like that, it almost feels like there could be an element of truth to it.
Look, I'm not saying I couldn't be wrong. I mean, you can be wrong because and there was a couple of sources. Sources are usually good, but there have been plenty of times over the years I've talked to people. I use Frank Broyles as a source all the time. From time to time, he was wrong. Orville Henry wrote a story one day saying Hatfield was fired. And he did it because Frank told him, I'm firing him. So he believed it, and then it turned out the chancellor wouldn't let him fire it, so Orville's story was wrong. So when you use a source, I don't care how good it is, it can always be wrong. So I could have been wrong on that. What I think is much more likely, and I've talked to some people about this, two things. I still have people saying that they flew out and interviewed him, and it was last week.
Do you have it clear? Was it him or was it his agent?
It could have been his agent, but they were
his
out
representatives.
They were out there, and that maybe after that interview, they kind of let him know, well, it's not happening, and so he could have said that after that, or he could have just been dealing with the fact that, and maybe his people out there around him, the people at the school, some of the other coaches said, you got to dispel this rumor better than you did before, because he'd addressed it once before. You've got to make it clear that you're not going to take this job, because if you don't, the players on this team are going to they're going to not play for you. And they were undefeated. So it's perhaps he said, look, I got to be more emphatic about that. So here's what I'll do. I'll just say 0.0 interest, and I'll throw in Malzahn there. I don't know that people have said he knew that was an insult. He would have to, I don't know. He would have to know Arkansas fans better than I think he does to know that that was insulting, because that's been the reaction. Once he said that, go look at any of these social media platforms, especially go to Hogville and look at what they say about it. That's like you bring up Gus's name, especially now that Florida State is going into they're going downhill. You know, Gus is going to come here? Nah, we don't want that. So for whatever reason, when he said that, the reaction was completely negative. But he may have been just saying that because they told him, really emphasize that you don't want this job.
Next question here coming from, from Chief Mack, I believe, who says, referring to Mullen, how does hiring a coach with a losing record improve Arkansas much beyond where Pittman got the program to? At Mississippi State, he was 33-19 in the SEC. Florida SEC record 19-13, and 1 year nearly went to the college football.
Yeah, his numbers are a little bit off. Mullen was actually a one game over 500 in the SEC, so he didn't have a losing record, and that was 13 seasons, so that's a pretty good sampling. Pittman won 32% of his games, so trying to say they're equal is way off. Let's compare him to other candidates for the job. Petrino, so far at this point, 53% of his SEC games were won. Vanderbilt, James Franklin, just 45%. But that's a small sampling because he was only there, 3 seasons. And then you go outside the league, this Golich at South Florida, he's won 55% of his conference games. So if the number of conference wins is important, that's what you're looking at. You can see why Lashley would stand out. He's since SMU went to the ACC, they're undefeated in conference games. A perfect 8-0 last year, 3-0 this year. So he's 11-0. And then the year before that, when they were in the American Athletic Conference, he was also 8-0. And then the first year, I think he was 5-3. So he's won 88% of his conference games there. Now, it's not the SEC.
It's a little inferior.
And people are saying, oh, you know, it's not the same thing. But again, this is why a lot of people are looking at Lashley. This is his first job as a head coach, but he's winning games. He's not hardly ever losing games that he shouldn't lose. He's impressive.
The numbers don't lie. He is impressive. Now, some of the track record things, like how the outs there happened at Auburn, man, that's a little bit more concern. Even, UConn had a bad season, but that's a different time. Next question here coming from Hog Dogger, who says, I think Drinkwitz got his feelings hurt that the media leaked that Kirby Moore might have been interviewed for the Arkansas coaching job. Sounded like he is insinuating that Arkansas was putting it out to the media to needle him. Dear Dinky, we're sorry, not Dinky.
Well, there are a lot of Razorback fans that don't like him. Look,
he's a winner.
Any coach in that situation, if it comes up, is going to say that. They don't want it out there that somebody on their staff was talking to a coach of a team or talking to a school that they're going to play. They still haven't played them. So he doesn't want that out there. But I don't know that that was in response to a question. As I watched that press conference, it looked like he just jumped up and said it. Look, Drinkwitz has always had this thing from the time he took the job. He's from Alma, coached under Gus at Springdale. So he's from here. but he's coaching up there, and he's always taking shots at Arkansas. That's the issue I had with him from the beginning. When he toned that down, that's when I changed my attitude about him. He's got a right to coach his team and do what he wants, and he even explained that when he first got there, he was kind of doing that because he was trying to build the players up. So I don't have any problem with that. But I think there's still a thing in there where he kind of is irritated a little bit about this rivalry. So if
Rivalry.
and it's not really a rivalry.
One-sided
No,
for
it's
Missouri,
not a
big time
rivalry.
one-sided.
But maybe he looks at it as, I don't want them to look like they have anything on us, so I'm going to, and what he said was it's a flat-out lie. I don't know, maybe it is. I wasn't there. I wasn't the one that even reported that. That was another 2 or 3 other media outlets that reported that he interviewed for the job, and maybe he didn't. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe Drinkwitz is right when he says it was an outright lie. But it comes across to me as just, hey, I don't like this. I don't want you saying anything about taking my guy, so I'm just going to say it didn't happen. I mean, you either like this guy or you don't. When they won this game, did you see what he did this past weekend after they won?
They won in overtime.
Yeah, won in overtime. And first of all, he thought he'd won it on a field goal, and he runs out on the field, and he's like all celebrating, and then somebody goes, wait a minute, they missed the field goal. He's like, what? So then he goes back, and then they win it in the end, and he's just jumping around, going bananas, waving around to the fans that are there. And he's just a real fiery guy. That's what he does.
He's been there for a while. He has to be one of the longest tenured
Well,
coaches.
he got hired the same year that Pittman got hired. So this is his 6th season.
Yeah, I thought it was even longer than that. All right, next question here coming from Little Weezy, who says, so much for my asking you if schools would change their approach to paying coaches in the new world of NIL. In the last 2 weeks, we've seen James Franklin paid $50 million to leave and Kurt Cignetti signed for over $11 million per year. You were right again. And I think those two things go hand in hand. Don't think it's a coincidence that Franklin gets fired and a week later Kurt Cignetti gets that kind of raise. Clearly, he must have been Penn State's top target.
Yeah, and I was right in saying that just because, things have changed, does this mean now that, schools will be more conservative about this stuff? To me, the NIL money, and look, there will be more money next year than this year. New TV contracts will kick in. Players will get more money. Coaches will get more money. And schools' athletic directors will do more stupid things like hiring a coach for more money than they can afford and then giving him an idiotic buyout. So that's what I was saying. That's not going to stop. However, there's one thing I didn't consider, and I want to mention it, and I'm saying schools in general. What's going to happen, and this bears keeping an eye on, what's going to happen to a school that has multiple buyouts? They've done it for several coaches. And the best one I can think of is LSU. You go all the way back to Les Miles. They bought him out and hired Ogeron, and then they bought Ogeron out.
And Ogeron's around $20 million.
Yeah, and so now you're talking about buying out Brian Kelly, and that's $53 million. So, and if you bought him out, you think you're going to bring in somebody else and go, well, we're not giving you a buyout. He would have to get one. Yeah. So you're starting to pile this up. And there's some evidence that A&M kind of cooled their jets on after what happened to them. So maybe what will happen long term is schools that have a history of doing these buyouts and then firing the guy and paying it will kind of be more reluctant, and they may keep a guy a lot longer than they normally would.
But don't you feel this? So it's easy for the fan base or for the school presidents, the athletic directors to say, this is getting ridiculous, it's out of hand, why we got to pay these buyouts? But then Jimmy Sexton, insert agent here, it's like, well, Florida's willing to give him the guaranteed contract. Yeah. Texas willing to give him the guaranteed contract. And then the circle just keeps on completing.
I don't think the buyout thing will go away. I think what could happen is long term you could see schools staying with coaches longer. They're not as willing to jump ship with a guy if they know because they've already bought this guy out and then they've had another one back there and they're going, wait, we can't keep doing this. We got to stick with this guy. And Kelly is a guy that the fans are really mad at down there. Yeah. I think he's going to survive. And I think he's going to survive because they're looking at the money and going, wait a minute, we can't do this right now.
Well, and then Penn State thinks, administrative-wise, they're barely going to have to pay James Franklin. They say, oh, yeah, it's $50 million, but he's going to get a job. We're only going to pay him $2-3 million a year. It's not going to
That's another thing you do consider, is if you figure this guy is viable somewhere else. So that's a good point.
A&M, though, they gave no offset language, their contract to Jimbo Fisher. He doesn't have to do anything.
And that's important. That's an important issue with athletic directors. The ones that do that are smart.
I'd give them extra money to make sure that you have some type of offset protection in there. Next question here coming from Hill Country Hog, who asked, what's your reaction to Vitello taking the San Francisco Giants job? I've heard that he's waiting for Van Horn to retire, and no longer coaching against Arkansas will help his chances. College baseball is not going anywhere for Tony Vitello. So good for him. We almost never see this, a college coach taking an MLB job.
Yeah. Look, first of all, I have to say that as of the taping of the show, I still don't see that he's taken that job. It's still up there as it looks like it.
Yeah, it's basically being reported that it's done.
Okay, so let's say that he does take the job. There's a lot of people that I know that know him because he was here and he coached here. And keep in mind that when he, in that super regional game, anybody that saw that press conference where he started talking about Arkansas in loving terms and how much he liked it here and all the people that are still on the staff, that he didn't say anything about Van Horn, but he said a lot of things about his assistant coaches. And I got to believe that Tennessee fans were chafing at that because they've had to sit here for 3 or 4 years and listen to all this stuff about as soon as Van Horn retires, they're going to lose their coach to Arkansas, and they don't like that. So then when he goes,
they have the highest paid coach in the country coming off the national championship,
yeah,
and they're worried. Hey,
and he comes here and says all that stuff. Now they're really mad, and that's what I'm told is Vitello sitting there and right there and knowing that his own fan base is a little bit ticked off at him, so he's a little uncomfortable with that. Then you throw in the fact that he has now seen that competing against Arkansas makes Arkansas fans not like him, and they don't. If you go to any sort of discussion right now before this about Vitello replacing Van Horn, they go, we don't want him. We don't want him. We just don't want him. He's a jerk, especially when he got into it with Van Horn 2 or 3 years ago. So look at what this does. You go outside college baseball. You remove yourself from Tennessee.
Get a massive payday.
You get more money than you know what to do with, even if you only stay there a few years. So you get away from the Tennessee fans. They can't be mad at you anymore about Arkansas because you're not at Arkansas. You're somewhere else. And how can they complain about you going to the major leagues? And then you're not competing against Arkansas anymore. You're not making Arkansas fans mad every year if Tennessee beats Arkansas. So what these people are saying is a perfect situation for him. Here's what I would say to you. All that sounds really good, but to me, if he goes to the Giants and wins, are you serious? He's going to come back here? What's he going to be making? Let's say, what do you think he'll make?
So Van Horn reportedly makes, it's public information, around $1.5 million. Vitello was the highest paid coach in the country at $3 million. So, add inflation, 3 years from now, Arkansas is going to be looking at paying him $3 to $4 million a year.
Okay, but what's he going to make at San Francisco?
8 to 11 a year.
Okay, and let's say he wins 3 or 4 years. Then what it goes?
Price goes up.
So then he's going to jump from here back to $2 million or $3 million when he's making, I don't know, 15. Yeah. I mean, come on. So I think this could be a nice thing for him to do if he goes and he's just sort of average and he reaches a point and he realizes Van Horn's about to retire. Dave calls him up and says, I'm going to retire this year. And he goes, okay, this would be a good time for me to leave the Giants because I'm not in real good footing here anyway. Then maybe he comes back. I just don't see him dumping that job if he's winning. I just don't see it happen.
But if he fails.
It
could even be interesting if Dave's getting closer to the end of the line and he does get fired. Could there possibly be a little bit of shenanigans going on to maybe attract him, right?
Yeah.
They should never do that, but you never know. Anything's possible, especially if it drops
Absolutely.
off. Final question here, up against it a little bit in time, so we're going to be quick. Getting close to basketball season. Kai Hogg asking, at the conference media event, why did Cal sound like he was worried about the team? Has something happened I don't know about? I just think he's trying to motivate his players.
No, they went down to that little, what they call it, the tip-off.
Oh, Hot Springs.
Tip-off scrimmage or whatever it was. And I talked to somebody who was there, and they told me, look, they look really good offensively. 2 teams playing against each other. There was no defense being played, none. All they were doing defensively was rebounding. They weren't blocking any shots, forcing tough shots or anything. And he said Cal got mad at the defense. And he's letting them know, you can't play this way and win once the season starts. Here's the problem with that, Trey. You know this. There's a huge difference between an inter-squad scrimmage. I don't care if it's football, basketball, baseball. You can't really tell what's going on when you're playing against your own guys. Yeah. Here's where we're going to get an idea if the defense is a problem. Friday night because they're playing Cincinnati here, and then the next Monday they're at the FedEx Forum or whatever that is over in Memphis, and they're going to play Memphis. Then we'll know whether defense is a problem.
All right, Mike Irwin, always breaking it down. Crazy. We're starting to talk about basketball season, even a couple questions here about baseball. And Bobby Petrino, the questions keep on rolling in. We'll see if the Hogs can finally get it done after losing 5 straight. And they got Auburn coming up on Saturday. For Mike Irwin, I'm Trey Dare. Thank you for joining us on Ask Mike.